Hello, everyone, and good happy Wednesday. This is September 21st, 2022. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind nonconformistconscience.com, the Facebook page Nonconformist Conscience, and also the Instagram page of the same name. This video is going to be a bit longer than normal because there is a lot to unpack here and a lot to revisit and review. There is so much going on astrologically right now, and it is worth talking about. So I would appreciate if you subscribe to this channel. If you enjoy what you're watching, please share it. I also do a written report. It's posted on my website and I post it on the Facebook page. If you're someone who likes things that are more technical within astrology, I go into the technicality a bit more in my written report. And I go into some more of the nuances of the week. So if that is your jam, you can go over to the webpage or the Facebook page, and I will post my web link in the comments section if you want to do that. So not only do we have a fall equinox this week, which is happening tomorrow, 3 days after that, we have a new moon in Libra, and I am going to talk about a lot of that. But before I do, there are a couple of things that I do want to talk about, just so we can refresh. We have 6 planets in retrograde right now. Those planets are Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. When we have retrogrades, there is a repeat, redo, and revisit theme. We get opportunities to revisit something, some type of dynamic that went on in the past, because on a level, a soul growth level, we feel like we didn't quite get it right. And so we get this opportunity to revisit something as a way to learn deeper about it and to fully integrate. So that is why so many people are feeling this energy and talking about it. And I will bring in the retrogrades as they're occurring within the astrology during this forecast and explain a kind of break down what that planet retrograde means. But I want to try to keep this really cohesive. So right now we have Saturn, who is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, in a conversation of tension with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, who is also retrograde. So there is a revisit theme going on here. This started on September 15th, and it won't end until the beginning of October, in the first week of October. So we have a really spectacular window of opportunity and growth right now. And how I'm viewing this also is Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius. Saturn structures our conscious. So it will color everything in someone's natal chart, and it really is coloring everything that's going on in the sky right now, because it is the structures of the consciousness, of the collective conscience, especially because this is in the sign of Aquarius. So this is a really, really powerful evolutionary gate for all of us right now, for humanity all over the world. And the reason why I say that is Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn right now. It's in the end degrees of Capricorn. It's retrograde. It will go direct, and next year it will dip into the sign of Aquarius for a little bit to give us a preview of what Pluto and Aquarius is going to look and feel like a little bit. Then it will retrograde back, enter the sign of Capricorn for the remainder of the year of 2023. And then in 2024, it will ultimately make its way back into Aquarius, where it will be there until the year of 2044. That is 20 years that Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. So whenever I'm looking at this Saturn in Aquarius square Uranus, we know that this is kind of like a preview before the preview. So with this conversation, it is, like I said, a key evolutionary juncture. That means that there is an immense amount of internal compression right now. And it is because there is a need to evolve at a rapid pace. So Saturn in Aquarius is really about liberating from any type of crystallized structures that we're holding within that are creating resistance to growth and to evolution on a personal soul-based level. So we're looking at the way in which we have been conditioned by society, family, religion, and these sorts of things. That is why I have been talking about it so much. This square between Saturn is happening with its planetary ruler. The planetary ruler of Aquarius, which Saturn is in, is Uranus. And Uranus is in the sign of Taurus right now, and it is also retrograde. We are all, if we've been having awareness and consciously working with this, we've all been working on figuring out what our values are. We've been figuring out our personal relationship with self. This is all Taurus. We're figuring out what it takes to survive, what we value, what gives us meaning. We're looking at our sexual values, our relational values, how we're able to meet our own needs from figuring out what our values are. But there is this liberation process, right, that is occurring. It's kind of this renaissance or a revolution of sorts where we're all figuring out what really gives us meaning on a personal and collective level. And we are liberating from the old structures that we've identified with or that have created resistance and repression within. And so there are themes to this of where we're revisiting something that has to deal with the way that we have been going about doing things, the way that we are taking care of ourselves, figuring out what natural resources that we have as a way to enact survival. All of these things, we can see within the collective what this is meaning. We have been looking at, especially with Uranus on the North Node, as it has been for, a while now in the sign of Taurus, we're looking at, how we treat the earth and its natural resources. And there is a need to want to liberate from the old ways of using the natural resources as a way to help the earth to continue to survive. So all of these things are coming up within the collective and personally. So the fall equinox is happening tomorrow on the 22nd at 8:04 p.m. The fall equinox occurs whenever the sun is moving above the equator, above the threshold of the equator. The natural zodiac Libra is at the equator. It's also the ruler of, it's naturally ruled by the 7th house, which is a transitional archetype, moving out of the Virgo realms of the lessons that we've been learning, how we've been creating wisdom for ourselves, the purification process of interrelational dynamics, the habitual relational patterns that we've been going through, the cycles. And it's Libra wants to have equality and balance within and with other. So there are 2 times a year when we have an equinox, the fall and the spring, and depending on what side of the hemisphere you're on, is the fall or the spring. So, you know, the other side is having their spring equinox. But this is whenever there's the same amount of light, daylight, and the same amount of nighttime, like nightlight. So there's 12 hours within each. It's, you know, equal, which is such a beautiful expression of, you know, Libra. And so this Libra equinox is really in indigenous cultures about looking at and understanding the rewards and the benefits of the harvest that we now have from planting the seeds way back in the spring equinox. And so we can look at this as that period of time to look at and to honor all of the hard work that we've been putting in since the spring. This is also a time whenever the Greeks felt like Persephone would go back to the underworld to be with Hades. And so there's this dynamic of preparing and enjoying the harvest before going back to work deeper and further on the shadow, so that we can take all of the harvest, all of the teachings, all of the integration we've been doing, and now compost it and transmute it in a more beneficial way and to go deep within. It's interesting because on this day, Persephone is in the sign of Leo. And this week, really, more than anything, is really looking at relational dynamics and relational patterns that have occurred, how to have a better relationship with self. And once we feel like we've mastered that to the point, we can come out and be in relationship with others in an equal way. This really speaks to all of the astrology playing out this week as dealing with deep ancestral cycles and karmic cycles and ending them. And there are a good amount of us, I feel like, through doing my work with clients, my own personal work, that are really doing that are really starting to see like, oh, I've been talking about like I'm ending this generational karmic cycle, but holy crap, like I see that I've been doing it. That's the harvest. But there still is work that needs to be done. That is all of this Aquarian Uranian energy and Virgo energy going on. It says that don't get too comfortable, because for evolution to proceed, we still need to do some work. And so I feel like with this equinox occurring, especially with Mercury conjunct the sun while this is occurring, there are going to be a lot of us who are understanding what the imbalances have been in our relationships, or where we have submitted to something that we didn't want to, or where we've dominated something that we probably shouldn't have, because it threw off the balance and the harmony within that dynamic. I feel like with Persephone in the sign of Leo and the moon in Leo on this day, the moon in Leo can really trigger childhood memories of not feeling seen or heard or having your needs met for who you are. And so if you're someone that has this come up or has been having this come up, there's a call to have balance and to really be able to have self-dignity. And we do that by creating all sorts, not just art, just inner creation that we know is co-inspired by on high, and then taking it out to share with people in a meaningful way. This is really about the deep childhood wounds that some of us feel because we didn't have our needs met. And there is guidance in the astrology that is helping and reflecting to us that we are able to be our own mother and our own father. And part of the process of liberating from our conditioning is learning how to claim personal authority and responsibility for self as a way to validate oneself, as a way to nurture oneself, to feel whole, to love oneself. And so there is this expression going on during the equinox of really learning how to love on one's inner child, especially if you have childhood trauma and memories being triggered right now. This equinox is also symbolizing, by just it being in Libra and also 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of nightlight, that there is a need to have balance within the inner masculine and inner feminine. That exists naturally in all of us. It exists naturally out in nature. You can see it expressed everywhere. And so there is a call to really ground oneself into that. So on the 24th, Venus is in the sign of Virgo, and she is going to oppose Neptune in the sign of Pisces. This to me is this deeper teaching of surrender. Surrendering to the process that's unfolding for all of us and not trying to control it, not trying to control the outcome or be attached to the outcome. It's really about understanding that things, even if we don't understand why they're happening, serve a purpose that is divinely inspired. So I feel like a lot of us are being called to have this surrender to the things that are unfolding in our life and to not try to control them. And when we surrender to the process of what's unfolding, we are able to take in the knowledge that is needed or the information. And later on down the road, we are able to really understand what it's all about, what the lessons were, what the teachings were, the deeper meaning. And this is happening just a day before the new moon. Before I go into the new moon, I want to talk a little bit about this Mercury retrograde. So on the equinox, Mercury is still in Libra, and it is going to conjunct the sun there before it goes into it retrogrades into Virgo. Mercury retrogrades can be tough for a lot of people. Whenever Mercury goes retrograde, there is a need to come back into balance with who one naturally is. Mercury really rules the left linear logical side of our minds. It's how we learn and how we communicate the information in a linear way. It's how we contextualize and define things through the learning. When Mercury is retrograde, there's an emphasis of going from the left linear logic mind to going to the right intuitive mind. And that's why it's so hard for so many people. Unless you have Mercury retrograde in your own chart, or you have a retrograde planet aspecting your Mercury. That's because when Mercury goes retrograde, you kind of feel like, I already do this, like, no big deal. But that's why it's really hard for a lot of people, is because there's an emphasis on balancing the logical left brain with the right intuitive. And so during this whole Mercury retrograde cycle, all of us are really needing to listen to our intuition. All the information that we've gathered and learned prior to this cycle of Mercury being retrograde, we now are needing to use the right intuition, the right brain, as a way to really understand what this is all about. So with Mercury, conjunct the equinox in Libra, there is a need to really take what you've been learning about the relationships that you're in and leaning on your intuition. A great way to help facilitate this process is if there is a question that you have about something during your meditation, to ask it and to be pointed about it, and to trust the process that when you are supposed to know what that means, that your intuition is going to tell you and guide you through that. And it doesn't always happen instantaneously. Most of things in life don't. But the purpose is to have the intention of wanting to know and knowing that you have the information that you need, but whenever it's the right time, you'll intuitively know how to go about using that information. So I wanted to speak on that a little bit because on the new moon that's happening in the sign of Libra, Mercury will be back into the sign of Virgo, where it was back at like the 25th of August, okay? So think about the things that were going on around that time in your life, and there's a revisit, repeat quality to this. So something from around that time or just before it can pop up for you. And I will go a little bit more into that in a second, but I really want to talk about the Libra archetype for a second, which I did a few weeks ago, but this new moon in the sign of Libra is really symbolizing a deep inner cycle that's about to start for all of us. It's kind of building upon this cycle that we've already been in, right? We have this Venus transit happening in Virgo. And when Venus is in transit, wherever that Venus falls in your own natal chart, that house, those are the relational dynamics that you're working on. Venus is the inner relationship and the outer relationship. The inner dynamics of Venus are the Taurus side. And remember, Uranus is in Taurus right now. The outer expression of Venus is Libra. So the outer expression of Libra, or the outer expression of Venus in the sign of Libra, is really about coming into balance and equanimity within relationship. And the way that we do that is by learning objectivity. Objectivity helps us to be able to listen to someone and what their needs are, and to be objective about what it is that they're asking us to do. So that helps create equanimity. Oftentimes, there can be a distortion with Libra, which is someone can ask for their needs, but how the other person is meeting their needs isn't actually what they're really needing or asking for. It's more of a projection of their own needs and their own expectations. And so there are lessons about being subservient or dominant in relationships with this new moon. It can bring up the emotional content about this, where you feel like you might have acquiesced to something in a specific relationship because you didn't want to rock the boat. This can also be about feeling like your own needs aren't getting met by someone else. And if that's the case, it's really important to look at if you're able to communicate those, or you're willing to be able to, are you even capable of meeting that need within yourself? If you aren't, there's some more Taurus work that you got to do. Right? But this new moon is going to bring up all of these emotional dynamics. It can bring up enmeshment for some, and codependent behaviors, and the insecurity that we have within when we're in partnership with other. And that really stems from how we've been conditioned to relate to people in relationships. And so there is a need, if these things come up, to take a deeper dive and to look at them and to really go within. With this new moon, there is a conjunction happening with Mercury and Venus in the sign of Taurus, right next to this Libra new moon. And this conjunction has the planetary ruler of this new moon in it, Venus. Venus in Virgo is really about understanding the habitual relational cycles that we all go through, that we're really, it's just, we're tired of them, right? There's this thing that happens in Virgo, especially with Venus there, of why is this happening again? What is going on? Why did I choose this? Why, right? And that's so that the, the relational dynamics can finally be exhausted. And then there's a call to go within with this signature whenever we're having realizations of a relational dynamic playing out. This Mercury conjunct Venus in the sign of Virgo as well is really about looking at our relational values, yet again, the ones that perpetuate habitual relational cycles that we really feel like aren't creating balance within. And with Mercury in the sign of Virgo, the beautiful thing about it is that there's this need to go within, so that way knowledge can be understood from what is occurring. And when that happens and we're able to have that objectivity, gnosis happens, a knowing, an understanding of the lessons that we've been, learning and cultivating, right? So this is that apprentice archetype with Virgo. This Venus and Mercury are in a trine to Pluto, who is retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. This can be a day where a lot of us are wanting to express something or have a conversation with someone who we've been in relationship with. And this type of trine that's happening between Pluto and Venus and Mercury is really one that offers a go for it, right? Like that if you're thoughtful about your words, that it is going to be what it is meant to be. So if there's a conversation that you've been wanting to have that you feel like is a hard one, this is the time to do it. There's a lot of, wisdom and guidance here that says that that would be a really good day to have that conversation. It's in what we call a disseminating trine. So something meaning to be disseminated. And within that disseminating trine, in that type of phase, there is more of a chance that it is going to fall upon ears that want to listen instead of deaf ones, so to speak. But with this Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, some can be afraid of wanting to express how they're feeling about whatever's occurring. And I really want those of you to look at that. With Pluto and Capricorn, this can be really a fear of expressing oneself because of the fear of being judged for expressing how you're feeling, what your values are, what you've come to learn about this, or what you're learning about a relational dynamic. It is something that needs to be looked at because we don't want to repress or suppress, because that prevents evolution or growth. And so this really speaks to, if you are needing to have a conversation with someone, to not suppress that, to own your authority, which is a Capricorn thing, and take responsibility for, you know, expressing what it is that you need to express. With this Libra new moon, though, there is a teaching and not being attached to the outcome. When we are attached to the outcome, it creates a dynamic of, if you do this, I'll love you, which is a form of codependent or enmeshed behavior. Remember, the day before, Venus is opposing Neptune, and this is really about surrendering to this process. It's also about, you know, Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. It's through what we call a yod, which is a finger of God, and it is a planetary conversation between 3 planets that can happen. But there is a natural yod that exists between Pisces, Taurus, and Libra. And it's, you know, Venus is ruled by Libra and Taurus, and Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, and it's the higher octave. It's the thing that helps us to spiritualize and to experience God or Source's love. And ultimately, when we experience that and we surrender to that love, we don't have to look outside of ourselves for it anymore. It is, we have a knowingness that it exists in us already. And then we are able to really appreciate and look out and see the love in the world, right? Or to see the truth of what's occurring as well through this natural love and guidance. And so this is a huge opportunity for us to have a surrendering process to the love of Creatress. So this new moon is also, okay, that Mercury is conjunct Venus, and it is during the new moon, and it's trining, the Venus and Mercury is trining Pluto, which is also retrograde. So this has a repeat, redo, revisit theme. Pluto transiting is the front runner of the dynamics of our soul's evolution. It's where it's your soul in your chart and the things you've been working on prior to this. And so whenever we have a transit with Pluto, it's kind of signaling what it is we are working on. And so a lot of us are working through judgment, shame, and guilt, and what is repressed and suppressed. And with this trine to all of this happening on the new moon, there is a great opportunity for all of us to really have the healing that we've been searching for and looking for. As I said earlier, Saturn is squaring Uranus. This is a key evolutionary juncture of rapid evolution for society, the collective, and personally. And so this is a day that really can speak to this evolutionary jump. But there can be fear, because if you're going about, or you're trying to express yourself in a new way,